Hello and happy World Links Day, 11th of June. Make sure you do something nice to celebrate the special links in your life. So you're joining me under the bridge, as Anthony Kiedis would say, and I thought this would be a good place to discuss a man named Robert Moses, an American urban planner. He was probably one of the most powerful and influential blokes in the history of New York and the state of New York as well. Moses was responsible for building heaps of shit. He developed the parkway system. I guess they like highways or motorways or freeways, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure there's differences between all of those, but whatever. He also oversaw the construction of loads of bridges and tunnels, like the one you see here, and he had a hand in developing a bunch of recreational areas as well, like the Jones Beach State Park, although I don't know how you make a beach. Maybe he just jazzed it up a bit, I don't know, dumped a truckload of sand there. And other parks along the Long Island coastline, he transformed those areas to make them more appealing. He developed lots of things throughout the city, but he was also a bit of a dick. That's why we're at this bridge. Bit of a dick is actually a bit of an understatement. He was a massive dick who basically was responsible for displacing communities and making Long Island and New York more car-focused. And he also perpetuated racial and economical inequalities as well. And you're like, how did he do that? He's a builder, or he's an architect, or he's an urban planner. How could he possibly have so much effect on communities? Maybe you're not wondering. You might be thinking, yeah, someone like that, sure. This is how he did it. This is one of Bobby Moe's infamous bridges. He ordered the city's engineers to build these for a particular reason. I'll give you 1 second to guess why.
1 second.
So Bobby Moses intentionally designed them to be low clearance to prevent buses from accessing certain beaches along Long Island. So he was effectively stopping minorities and low-income communities, predominantly the African American and the Puerto Rican communities, from being able to access those spaces. So basically, you could only go to the beach or the parks if you had access to a car. Buses could just not get there. So to build all these parkways and motorways through New York and Long Island, Bob had to demolish or destroy the existing communities that were in these areas. They were laid waste. He was also responsible for building public housing, but he exacerbated the problem by putting public housing in already marginalized areas. The segregation and the poverty was concentrated. He was also a complete bossy boots. He did not ask for the community's input at all, and he was not transparent. I think only his wife might have been privy to his kind of, let's face it, evil design. It's pretty fucking evil. And it's Bobby's exclusionary design that has inspired this episode today. And that episode is on hostile architecture, or as it's sometimes referred to as defensive architecture or anti-homeless architecture or design. So before I show you what I'm talking about, this is probably the most egregious and disgusting example of it I've ever read about. It blows my mind that they basically trapped people, literally trapped them from going to the beach or a fucking park or going to work in the city, because these were the ways you would travel to get into New York or Manhattan Island, and if you couldn't go this way, you were fucked. So yeah, exacerbated the already existing issues. And that is just, if you're an urban planner, what kind of sadistic fuck are you? Like, why would you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to make your community stronger? Oh, God. Yeah, that's systemic racism in fucking town and urban planning. Whew. All right, but that's just the beginning of the problem. It was a pretty big problem. Anyway, before I show you some examples of hostile or defensive or anti-homeless architecture, makes me sick just saying that, I just wanted to share this with you. I've spent a little while now developing this map on hostile architecture, which I hope you find interesting. I couldn't find anything that existed on it in Geoguessr. Yeah, it's a map that is dedicated to sharing examples of hostile architecture around the world. So that could be anything from, maybe I should explain what hostile architecture is other than the bridge example. It's basically something that's put in a public landscape to either control something or deter someone or something, whether it's a human or it could be a bird or a car or an animal. But usually it's to deter some behavior that's perceived to be undesirable without really addressing the fucking issue. Anyway, so an example of that is, again, this makes me sick to my stomach even saying it, anti-homeless spikes. Or another example is giant rocks or boulders that are placed in garden beds or under overpasses, basically to prevent encampments or to prevent people from sleeping there under cover. One example of hostile architecture that we've probably all experienced but didn't really think too much about it, the run-of-the-mill park bench. If you've ever sat on a park bench in public, 9 out of 10 times it's probably made out of metal, and that serves the purpose of making sure you don't stay there too long, because on a summer's day it's going to be really hot, on a winter's day it's going to be really cold. There's usually holes in them so the air blows up and you can't really get comfortable. And the most annoying thing about them, and this occurs pretty much everywhere, is the armrests. So there's individual armrests in between each seat. Anyway, I'll show you. And this is a carefully curated map on hostile architecture around the world. Most of the examples are in the US and the UK, but they're everywhere, literally everywhere. And there's some kind of funny ones in there too. Like this one I can absolutely get behind. It's called a urine deflector. I'll show you a picture of one of those soon. There's even some gardens in there. Sometimes cactus or cacti is used to deter people. Okay, so this is an endless list. I've got less than 100 examples, but that took a while. I wanted to get good images. If you have one, submit it to my email address here, geoguessr@gmail.com, and I'll add it to the map. So play it. I'll play one round as well so you can have a look. But first, let's go through some of these examples of hostile architecture. Okay, so this is probably one of the most fucked up things I've ever seen. This is from the Guangdong region of China. I'm so sorry if I fucked that up. I was going to check just before I recorded, but anyway, I apologize. And yeah, this is the most unsubtle display of anti-homeless spikes under an overpass or bridge I've ever seen. It's so disgusting. So these anti-homeless spikes are usually sharp metal studs, and they're placed all over the place, really, on ledges, on benches and surfaces under bridges, and they're there to deter individuals that are experiencing homelessness from finding shelter. It is a completely cruel and inhumane approach to solving the problem of homelessness, and it doesn't really help. It just makes them even more vulnerable, like literally forcing them out into the rain or into a more vulnerable situation. I don't know what the point is. Anyway, that's anti-homeless spikes. Imagine getting your fucking architecture degree or your urban planning or city planning degree and working on that spiky project. Anyway, this next example is a very famous example of hostile architecture. This is called the Camden bench, and it's a less offensive, but just as fucked up, really. So this is a more subtle hostility, and I actually find the more subtle or the downright deceptive, hostile design to be almost more egregious. They're trying to pretend to be something else when really the underlying motive or the real motive is to fucking move people on. At least with this disgusting, spiky underpass, there's no ifs and buts about what it is, but this not so much. So this design is basically to make it impossible to lie down or sleep comfortably. So with the slanting and the uneven edges, and it's made out of concrete as well. Deter lingering or resting or just even, I don't know, just lying down basically. So that's the famous Camden bench, which you'll find in Camden in the UK. I've also seen them in Soho as well, and no surprise, London has a lot of defensive design in urban spaces. Okay, the next one I want to show you is very common, and you've probably seen these and you might already know what they are. They're everywhere. These are anti-skateboard design measures that have been taken. So often it will be a metal stud that's attached to the concrete, or it might be curved around the concrete. They're called fins. See this one here, the long one? That's called a fin. Or they're sometimes called pig ears. I know that's what they call them in Australia. So this was a very popular skating area in the city of Melbourne called Lincoln Park, and there's a memorial in this park for the victims of a terrorist attack on Australians in Bali. So they didn't want the skaters to skate here anymore, as they felt it was disrespectful. So they installed some of this anti-skate, I was going to say hardware, anti-skate measures. So yeah, the studs. You'll literally see these everywhere you go in every city. The studs and the fins, and also this as well, which is just uneven concrete. So be pretty tricky to perform a grind, I don't know, on something like that, unless you're super talented. Yeah, so it's just to stop you from being able to do any sort of tricks or jumps or stunts. Anyway, I love Melbourne. Now, let's head on to the next one. So yeah, this is another park bench example, which is to prevent people sleeping on it. I found this one in Russia. I can't remember the name of the city, but basically in the evening they will walk around the parks and they'll lock the park benches up so people can't sleep on them during the day. What a fun job for that groundskeeper. Here's another one that you may not perhaps have thought was hostile in design or defensive in design. A curved seat. You'll see these at train stations and I guess lots of waiting places. But this is deliberately designed so that you can't lie down on it unless you have, I don't know, some truly awful scoliosis. All right, that's it for park benches. On to the next example, and this next example is rocks and boulders. And you've probably seen these as well. If you've ever walked under a bridge or driven under an overpass, you might see rocks piled up underneath them. So yeah, this is an example of hostile landscaping. These ones have been concreted into the ground by the looks of it. And this is just, used to give something a jagged or a sharp surface just to make it impossible to sleep on. Like, why else would you put this here? It's the stupidest thing ever. This is a not so subtle one as well. This is a very common defensive design feature. Things that are fenced off for no apparent reason. So just basically a corner or an alcove that's just cut off. Someone that's experiencing homelessness cannot seek shelter there. So alcoves and corners are usually covered up top, protected from the rain, and that is to stop them loitering, sleeping, or stopping or sheltering in place there. Yep, that's what that's for. Feels good. These next examples are even worse because they are pretending to be something completely different to what their intended purpose was when placing them here. This is planter boxes. Yeah, You might say, what are you talking about, Yenna? They're here to beautify the city, to make them look pretty. They're also designed to literally push people experiencing homelessness out onto the street. It's just less space for them to occupy, and they're always spaced in a way that makes it impossible for them to sit or lie in between as well. I implore you, next time you're in your city or in a city, look around for these examples. You'll immediately see how many fucking planter boxes with crap, shitty plants are sprawled across your city. This next one, you might be like, what are you talking about? This is art. And this is worse than the planter boxes for me. This is what I would call art as obstruction. So it's even worse than the planter boxes. It's, hey, I'm an art piece designed to, I don't even know. What does art do? Yeah. But really, again, this little bronze woman quietly reading a book of poetry or some fucking A.A. Milne or some shit, she is basically acting as an armrest on this bench. She is there to stop someone lying down. She's not there because they wanted to have a cool bronze statue in the city. You might argue with me on this one, but it's, yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, and they're cool and you can sit around it and you can pose for a photo or whatever, but next time you put your arm around that bronze or pewter statue sitting in the middle of a park bench in a city or a town, just hopefully I'll help you in the back of your head, reminding you that this was here to stop someone having a good night's sleep. Okay, so a lot of hostile design tries to mimic modern architecture or artistic elements to appear more contemporary. The Camden bench is an example of that. It just looks like a weird block of concrete in Camden, so it's not out of place there. Yeah, they do it so it fits in with the surroundings, but they also do it to disguise their intentions, which is so, I need another synonym for disgusting. And it's really hard to see unless you're someone that's been directly impacted by it. You might think I'm being over the top when I say this is an example of exclusionary design, but I say to you, if you're looking for a place tonight and this is the only option, you would be looking at this bronze reading woman in a different light as well. They do it to, trick the public into believing that it's not that, and to mitigate any backlash if somebody took issue with it. So if they had, some machetes strapped together with duct tape here, they would get outraged. But a kind little lady, who's gonna kick up a fuss about that? It's so sneaky. It's so sneaky. Completely sneaky. So here's another example of a bench that stops someone from sleeping in it. I feel like burgeoning architects and designers really get to flex their bullshit creativity muscle when it comes to designing the most fucking uncomfortable things ever with no consequence, because it doesn't matter if somebody is uncomfortable by this. That's the point. So you can just make it whatever the hell you want. Yeah, this is obviously disgusting. Disgusting. All right. Synonyms for disgusting. Let me just look a couple up. Repellent, repulsive, sickening, nauseating. I've already said sickening. Unpalatable. No. Shocking. That's one I'll use. Back to the show. All right. I hate that one. This woman. Okay. So this next one I'm about to show you is the one that I find the most nauseating, the most revolting. I don't know why this one upset me the most. It just did. It is an example of obstructive art. So this one is at a train station and it is in Calgary in Alberta, Canada. If you don't know anything about Calgary or the state of Alberta in Canada, it is pretty far north and it gets pretty fucking cold. So temperatures in Calgary in Canada can reach minus 30 degrees. I can't even imagine that. Imagine experiencing homelessness and having to sleep outside in minus 30 degrees with that context. Not that it should fucking matter, but so these are at the front of a train station, and these are heating vents. So this used to be a very popular location for the people experiencing homelessness in Calgary. They could sleep on the heating vents and get a little bit warm, get some warmth in the long freezing Canadian winters. But that was unacceptable. So they decided to build this fucking art called the commuters or some bullshit like that. And they put them on the heating grates. So all of the heating grates in and around these train stations have these pieces of work on them. It's to beautify the city. It's public art. It's definitely not to stop the people literally freezing on our streets, to stop them from getting warm. It's definitely not that. It's just a coincidence that we put them on this outdoor heating source. So yeah, that one got me the most. It's revolting. That's hostile architecture. Fun topic. There's this one other one I wanted to mention before we move on to actually playing some Geoguessr. Okay, so some amazing people out there have made maps for their cities on MapHub about instances of hostile architecture or defensive design in their cities. And this is one that I found a lot of great examples on for the city of Toronto. The one other example I wanted to show you is of something so stupid. Wait, where is it? It's called, hold on. All right, this is the one I was looking for. This is one that was made for DC, Washington, DC. So this example is called a ghost amenity or a ghost bench or a ghost park, and not the fun, spooky Halloween kind. Here's an example of a ghost bench. This is just like, why even put this here? I don't know if you can see that. I'll try and zoom in. It's basically the ends of the bench, but the seat isn't there. So that's called a ghost bench. I just don't know why you would bother. And I suppose sometimes they don't. They don't bother putting anything in the park for comfort. Here's another ghost amenity. So this is just a park without a single bench. You might think it's a block. It could be, I don't know. Somebody's listed it as a ghost amenity. Here's another one. This is a park. Come on. It's a park. And it doesn't have a single bench, a drinking fountain, literally nothing. So that's that. And these, what are they for? What's the point? What's the point? Do you just lean on it? I think you just lean on it. But who goes to a park and leans on it? Leans on this thing. It's just fucking ridiculous. But undoubtedly the most common anti-homeless design that you will see in cityscapes is the anti-sleeping benches. They're literally everywhere. You look at them in a new light now, hopefully, because really, how often does anybody use an armrest? They don't. They just don't. They're annoying, especially in planes, especially in plane airport lounges, or whatever you call them. Yeah, and it's not just for arms anyway. When you see one like this, is just, can you say on YouTube? Probably not. Yeah, that's not an armrest. This is, I want your back to be in pain when you try to lie down here, because I hate you because you're homeless. That is what that says. Imagine living in a city like that and trying to feel good about yourself every day. It would be so hard. It would be so hard. Like, what a fucking pathetic band-aid to a really serious problem. Why don't you use your great minds and come up with a solution for housing? Try that. I know it's a complex issue, but making uncomfortable chairs, surely that's not the fulfilling... Look at this fucking thing. Surely that's not what you had envisaged when you went to uni to study this. You probably didn't have to sleep on the park bench in between classes either. All right. I've seen enough. I'm sure you've seen enough as well. You've probably seen more park benches than you ever thought you would on YouTube. I would just like to quickly mention a few other examples of defensive architecture. I really hope you set up a game of defensive architecture bingo before we began, because I've said those words a lot. Maybe I'll put a counter up. So there are a few other kinds. There's a lot of different weird creative ways to deter people from doing things in public. It's almost as if you don't want them to exist. Some of those things are sprinklers. So a sprinkler in the park, they activate at night basically to wet people who are sleeping there. Speakers in train stations, I'm sure everyone's familiar with that one. I recall getting home late often in Melbourne, and they would always have classical music absolutely blaring at Footscray Station. Yeah, to stop people hanging out there or sleeping there. It's really nice, isn't it? That is the neighbour you would call the police on. Call them up. I would like to report my neighbour, Footscray Station. I would like to report my neighbour, Public Transport Victoria. They're playing music after hours and I can't get a wink of sleep. So sprinklers and speakers, and even some places even like emit high frequency sounds to deter people as well. Anyway, that's the war on sleeping and sitting and being in public. It's the park benches and chairs versus the world, and spikes versus the pigeons. The animals don't get a break from this either. I read a fucking story recently. It was so gross. It was basically in this area of London. Here we go. Fucking hell. It was in Westminster. So basically, it turns out it wasn't the council. It was like a body corporate or something, but the council did remove them in the end, which is nice. The residents, they didn't like the birds. They didn't like them because they were living above their cars, and birds obviously shit on cars. But the fucking audacity of a bird to even consider, to have the gall, to have the bird balls to want to land on a branch. Nah, said the residents of Westminster. They said, no, fuck you. I'm going to spike those fucking branches up. You can go and sit, I don't know where, on a park bench. Fancy thinking this is okay. Like, it's a bird. Where is it meant to go? You stupid people. Like, get a fucking grip. So gross. All right. Now, so I feel very strongly about this. This bridge thing that sent me over the edge when I learned about that for the first time. All right, on to Geoguessr. I think I need some fresh air. I'll be right back. Okay, that air was fresh. Now, on to the game. Let's close these disturbing images. And check out these maps on Map Hub. There's a really great one for Washington, D.C., one for Toronto, one for Calgary, and a few other places. Or if you are feeling inspired, make one for your city, or get a group of people together and make one as a team. What a fun way to spend the weekend. It's a good way to explore your city as well. All right, onto the map that I created that I encourage you to play. I hope you find it interesting and fun. And again, if you would like to submit an example, please just email the coordinates to me and I'll add it. I'd love to see more examples from cities all over the world, or towns too. These things don't just happen in cities, they happen in literally everywhere. All right, so let's play my map. Hostile architecture, let's go. All right, so first example is one I actually showed you in the video, so my bad, but this is Lincoln Square. I went to say Lincoln Park in Melbourne, Australia, and this park is famous for its anti-skate features. So we have the uneven concrete blocks, and then over here you can see the fins and the pig ears. That's to prevent skating. Here it is, Lincoln Square. All right. Yeah, okay. So this is an example of the pointless fence. I think I showed you an example earlier. The pointless fence is a fenced off area that doesn't really need to be fenced off. It's not stopping, well, I mean, it is stopping you from trying to seek a basic human right, and that is shelter. Yeah, there's no reason why these fences have to be here other than to stop someone seeking shelter in this corner. So I hate these ones so much. Because when you're, you should be free to stand under any alcove, any roof in a public space that you want to stand under. It's just sickening, really. So this one is in France, because we're at the front of a Carrefour market. France has a lot, just generally as well. Okay, so France, and I can't remember where, so I'm just going to go somewhere in Paris. Alright, that's good. Alright, this example is so gross as well. This is like medieval shit here, so it should not be a surprise to you that we're in fucking England. This is the old Bank of London from memory, I think. It might still be a bank, I don't know. The International Arbitration Centre. So, anyway, at the front of this modernist building, we have these two windows, and yeah, you can see for yourself what they've done to them. So this would be the perfect sleeping spot. Well, not perfect. Again, sleeping outside is never perfect. It's horrible. But it has got a pretty good hammock shape, and it would afford some protection. However, they've put some really severe metal spikes in these windows to, stop people sitting there or lying there. So aggressive, no disguising the fact that that's what they're doing. It's, fuck you, we don't want you here, do not sit here. I mean, why even, I don't really have anything else to say about it, just that it's horrible. And over here, this very common as well, just in a doorway, having one planter box to make it even more difficult for somebody to take shelter. Because you don't need a plant there. You don't. It doesn't even get any sun. But very, very common. The planter boxes are rife, absolutely rife. Spikes are rife as well. Oh god, London has some of the worst examples, but this one is just like, I don't even think they're allowed to have these in Melbourne, and it blows my mind that you're even allowed to install them. It's like, just so savage. Off to London. That'll do. Yep. Alright, it was over here, and it was the old Bank of England. Alright, so this is an interesting example that I didn't cover earlier. I might have. So having an uneven surface is a massive deterrent when you're sleeping. You kind of see it in the Camden bench. The uneven surfaces make it hard to, be comfortable. But you also see it on park benches. The bottom part of the seat, it will slant downwards. This example here is slanted doorways. So this is like a corner building, and it has a little bit of a roof wrap around it. And so it could have potentially been an okay spot to, rest, seek shelter. But they've installed these sort of slanty, slide things, just to make it impossible to even just rest against it, lie against it. It forces you back out into the street. And this is in Hong Kong. If you ever see one of these cabs, I love the Hong Kong cab. It's this one here, red taxi, classic Hong Kong cab. Just to give you another little cluesy. I hope I'm right now. Pretty sure I am. Pretty sure that's unique to Hong Kong. But you know what isn't unique to Hong Kong? Anti-homeless architecture. It is present in every country in the world. Oh God, and here we go. We have another very aggressive example of anti-homeless spikes, and they're installed on this bridge to stop people from sitting here. So, there might be a time when someone who is experiencing homelessness doesn't want to sit on the fucking ground for once. They want to sit on, something that resembles a seat, but we will deny you that. And you might say, maybe this is for the birds, or maybe it's just some, I don't even know, artistic choice. But as you can see here, this is somewhere where an encampment is present, so it isn't a coincidence that these spikes are here and that people experiencing homelessness use this spot as well. That's about all the shit ways we treat people I can tolerate for one evening in the US. That'll do. Don't really care. It was over in Washington, DC, not Washington State. Alright, almost had a good score. I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you can see or appreciate how deceptive, well, not in this case, there's no deception here, design choices in urban spaces are, and how they impact people that are perhaps less fortunate than you are. Next time you're out, you can count all the times you spot an example of hostile architecture or defensive architecture in your city. Go out and have a look, count your own, look out for the subtle ones like the planter boxes, the ones in disguise. Doesn't matter if it's in disguise or it's really obvious, like this one here at the bank of the Old Bank of London. They're all designed to prioritize exclusion over inclusivity. And if you come across something in your own city that is particularly hostile, like the spikes, for example, that troubles you ethically by just how cruel and inhumane it is, you absolutely can write something to your local authority about it. You can let them know how concerning you find it, or you could even just bring it up with another community organisation. You'll probably know this more now than you ever have before, especially if you had not heard of this particular style of architecture. Sorry about that, but that's just, it's good to think about how other people are experiencing public spaces who are different to you. And at the risk of ending the episode on a corny note, remember that you have the power to advocate for change in your own community, and you can be a voice for other people as well, because all the spaces that we share should be built on principles of inclusivity and empathy and fairness. If you see something that you don't like, do something about it. So that's pretty much it. I certainly got a bit up on my high pony there for a while, and I'll get down now. But yeah, I hope you found this interesting. Send me an email, and for fuck's sake, don't be like Bob. Do not be like Bob and his bad bridges. All right, happy Links Day. See you later.